Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. It was nice to see David Grusch, the whistleblower and retired Air Force official, on NewsNation yesterday talking about what just happened in Congress. As we all know, Congress basically failed to include the UAP Disclosure Act in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024. Of course, that bill included all kinds of UAP transparency measures that would have helped. I believe, is it full disclosure? No, but it would have helped. It would have prodded this thing along, but now it's not included because, of course, we have the puppets of the secret control group, Mike Turner and Mike Rogers, who are the chairs of some of the House committees that somehow they were able to kill this bill. I don't know how this is possible, but they did. I mean, even though it seems like a vast majority of people in the Senate and in the House, in a bipartisan fashion, wanted to pass this, wanted to include this language in the bill, but because two guys or a handful of guys somehow are able to hold it up and keep it out. I mean, why? How is that possible? What kind of democracy is it when a couple of yo-hos, corrupt politicians, are able to quash things that get brought up like this? I don't understand it, but that's what happened. But I thought it was interesting. Grush called it. He said, what we're witnessing right now is the greatest legislative failure in American history. I have to agree with him because it is a legislative failure when you really think about it. The fact is that there's an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth, and by not including that language in the bill to try to move us finally toward the end of the cover-up, it's a failure. I mean, in fact, again, is that a handful of corrupt politicians somehow get their way while the vast majority of the rest of them don't get their way. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's how this is working for some reason. Whatever it takes, I guess, from the secret control group. They pull the strings. They have the power. So I obviously I agree with Grush on that. As far as I'm concerned, it's the biggest story of all time. The fact that we're not alone in the universe, and yet that story is being held up by bureaucrats and crooks, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing I thought was interesting that he talked about was Ken Klippenstein. Now, he didn't say Ken Klippenstein by name. He was that yellow journalist who was basically sicked onto Grush earlier this year by people in the Department of Defense and intelligence community had contacted this Ken Klippenstein, who's just what, according to Grush, is an immature troll. Yeah, I totally agree with that. He's an immature troll who makes a living by digging up dirt on people, trying to make people look bad for whoever wants him to, whatever group contacts this guy. Apparently, this guy is like a dog. He'll do whatever they want you to do just to get money and likes and clicks, and thinks he's doing a great job when really he's not. He presented a one-sided story of David Grusch. It was basically a hit piece, as Grush called it, which I thought it was, and a lot of people in the UFO community thought it was. It was a hit piece that Klippenstein ran in The Intercept earlier this year. That basically focused on some of the issues that Grush has had in the past with PTSD. And the police were called to his house a couple of times. So, the intent of the article that Klippenstein had written was basically to try to make Grush look like a complete idiot and you can't untrustworthy. That was how it was presented. And Grush said he was upset with this, and he said something else which I thought was interesting, is that he believes that the Department of Defense Inspector General needs to look into this because, like Klippenstein said, he admitted it, as Grush points out. Klippenstein admitted that the elements within the Department of Defense and intelligence community sicked Klippenstein onto Grush, gave him information, told him about things that there was no way he would have ever been able to know about unless somebody had told him about it. And people you're not supposed to do that. That should be against the law. What happened there? That's giving up someone's private health information. Somebody from the government contacted Klippenstein, gave up some private health information. Klippenstein was able to get the information via public means later on, but initially that information came from people within the government, and that's not supposed to be how things work there. You're not supposed to give up that. That's private. Any kind of stuff that's in your health background is supposed to be kept private. But these guys felt it was necessary to do this because they wanted to drag Grush's name through the mud. So I thought it was nice to see that Grush called these people out. And the best part about the whole interview is the fact that Grush points out that he is going to be giving us some more information, that he was cleared somehow to get release some more information, and he plans to do that within the next couple of weeks in an op-ed. He's going to tell us more. Apparently he is a first-hand. It wasn't just people he talked to. Apparently there's more to his story that he's going to be able to tell now, and he's going to reveal this in this upcoming op-ed. And I guess everyone in the UFO community, I'm sure, will be looking forward to reading that for certain. Anyway, I'm going to move on here. I want to talk about something, the danger sometimes that UFOs can pose to just anybody at any time, anywhere. And I want to look at a story from 1976. And now I've been doing some research on this for the past couple of days. I heard about this. I read about this story a long time ago. And it involves a person who's now passed away named Luis Barrosa Fernandez. And it happened in 1976 in Brazil. Brazil is like a major UFO hotspot for a long time now. And this guy got zapped by an object, and he never recovered from it. It ruined his life. I mean, and there were other strange things that happened to him, and that's what I want to talk about. Anyway, here's from an article from UFO Insight. I'm going to go through some of this article and we'll talk about it as we go through it. It says here, the case of Luis Barosa Fernandez is perhaps one of the best examples of the, on occasion, horrifying after effects of close encounters with UFOs and aliens. Most of what we know of the account comes from Luis's son, Francisco Leonardo Barosa. And part of the reason why he is the main source of information over the years is his father's rapidly deteriorating state following the encounter. We should note that Barosa's testimony of the version of events has remained unchanged since the encounter in 1976, despite corroborating with numerous investigations and interviews regarding the matter. I just want to point out that this article was from December of 2018, so it's a few years old at this point. Now, before I even get into this story, I want to point out there's a lot of different variations of this story of what happened. And basically what happened is this farmer ended up seeing this UFO, and it shined some sort of a light into his face, and it knocked him out. And then when he woke up, he was delirious, and his physical, everything about him, physically, he just deteriorated from there and for the rest of his life. And worse than that even. But there are some versions of the story that says that state that there were two extraterrestrials that pointed some sort of a flashlight at Barosa, but that's not the case. People that investigated this, there was a book that was actually a book called UFO Danger Zone by Bob Pratt from the 90s that I was looking at, and the story was in there, and there's no discussion there of beings. It was actually just the craft that shined, where this beam came out and hit him in the face. And you hear stuff like this a lot where people get zapped. I mean, look at someone like Travis Walton got hit by a beam and he disappeared for almost a week, and then he reappeared, and he thought he was only gone for a little while, and he realized it was like 5 days went by. He couldn't believe it. But sometimes apparently these beams that come out of these crafts could have a devastating effect on people. And in this case, it really did have a devastating effect. Anyway, continuing with the article here, it says, in a country that already has more than its fair share of UFO encounters in the South American continent, the Barosa case is one of the most well-known and intriguing. Indeed, it would result in the 2012 film Area Q, shot on location in Quezada, the city in which the most strange encounter would unfold. We are unlikely to ever know what happened to the most unfortunate Luis Barosa, or whether the incident was an intentional malicious act or a bizarre and tragic accident. It is perhaps a warning for future cases and another incident with which to search for matching or similar accounts as they enter the public arena, as we attempt to pin down a little more what the truth behind these bizarrely intriguing encounters are. Yes. Now, I just want to point out, it's just funny. Just the other day, I ran a poll on one of my podcasts and asked question about what would you do if you came across a landed UFO and alien beings walking around it in a lonely field somewhere. What would you do? One of the responses was you would approach it, and some people say they would approach it, right? And not many people though said they would run away. I think I pointed this out the other day. If you were actually going to see something like this, if you actually were out somewhere by yourself and you see one of these things flying close to you, you're going to be scared. I'm going to tell you right now, because I was scared back in 1994. I realized what could possibly happen here. I thought this thing that I saw in 1994 was going to land right in front of me. And me and my buddy were going to get dragged onto it, and God knows what would have happened then. But I was scared. I wanted to get out of there. And I think that a lot of people, when you're put in that position, you're going to be scared. And after you hear this story here, you might want to run away. You might think about just running away even before considering hiding and trying to watch the action from behind a bush somewhere. Anyway, it says here, in the early hours of April 3rd, 1976, at a little after 2 a.m., farmer Luis Barrosa Fernandez was on his farm near Quesada checking his cattle. It was a weekly job which he preferred to start before dawn, hence the extremely early hour. According to the account relayed by his son, he was on a wagon on the farmland this particular morning when something that looked like an airplane descended close to the ground a short distance away from him. As he watched in awe, confusion, and fear, the strange craft fired a powerful, nearly blinding beam of light at him. The strange craft then simply left. At least that is the story told to Francisco by Luis. Whenever he is asked if he believed his father's rather bizarre account, he always replies the same. Not only do I believe this, he claims, I've seen it for myself. According to Francisco, UFO activity is rife in the city of Quesada. With his father and mother both passed away and his siblings moved away from the family home, he is the only member of the Barosa family to remain there, and according to him, these strange sightings continue today. As for his father, as we will examine in a moment, the consequences were apparently rapid and severe. As to exactly what happened is open to debate. Was the strange beam some kind of weapon, and for what purpose was he attacked? Was the sighting perhaps more than just a sighting? Might the beam have been the start of an abduction experience that Luis, like many other abductees, simply could not remember? Something his sudden deteriorating health would have done nothing to help. In the immediate aftermath of the encounter, Luis's injuries were severe and painfully apparent. His son would recall how his father's skin had become red, as though burned. Even more bizarre and concerning, however, was the changes to his mind. As the days and weeks went on, his mind appeared to become less and less functional, almost as if it was like that of a child. Hospitals and specialists from around the world would attempt to get to the bottom of Luis's strange and rapidly deteriorating condition. However, despite experts from Portugal, Italy, and Spain, to name a few, he would ultimately pass away in 1993. His conditions and the reasons for it still unexplained. At the time of his death, his brains had almost completely returned to that of a child. So much so, he could only use and recall 3 words: mama, give, and fear. Some sources state he could say dada also. Whatever did happen to Luis and whatever condition took a hold of him, his final decade and a half must have been one of fear, confusion, and ultimately sadness. In another rather bizarre twist to the already horrific affair, while his mind rapidly unraveled, his damaged and burnt skin would seemingly repair itself. In fact, even though he was an elderly man, his skin was that of a healthy adult in the prime of their life. Francisco would comment that it was as though it had grown over again. So basically, I'm going to stop there for a second. So his skin, like, he got burned from this, and he was, he's an old, aging man, and his skin was burned from this encounter. He wakes up on the ground in a different spot than where he was when he got zapped by this. He was able to tell him what happened at first, but then as time went on, his mind just completely reversed. It was like he was transforming into that of a 1-year-old baby. That's all he could only come up with a couple of words toward the end of his life. And his skin was starting to look like baby skin. His old skin, his old burnt skin was like replaced with some kind of baby skin. But he ended up dying though in 1993 from this. His life was basically ruined from that point on. And no doctors. There was a bunch of different doctors that, if you do your research on this case, all these doctors looked at him and they had no explanation for what happened to him. But he was struck by some kind of a beam out of a saucer-shaped craft in a field. Why would aliens want to do something like that? I have no idea why. What was he abducted? It sounds like he probably was. Probably got shocked with the beam. They probably abducted him. Who knows if they're just playing games? Who knows? Maybe there's some criminal elements among the alien visitors that come here, and they just do horrible things like this for kicks. And that could be it. Who really knows? It's all speculation. But you've heard many stories like this where people get hit with a beam. Now he was paralyzed when he was hit. He couldn't move, and he lost consciousness. And the donkey too was acting. Had a donkey with him at the same time. The donkey was hit too by this ray, and the donkey was skittish after this. For a while, the donkey was having problems getting around and moving around. But after a week or so, it was okay. It returned to normal somewhat, according to the family members. But it was skittish for the rest of its life, and it wasn't like that before this incident. It could something like this. I mean, if you see a UFO somewhere, your best bet is to try to get out of there as quickly as possible, because you have no idea what you're going to get yourself into if you do not. We really don't know. I mean, in some cases, maybe these beings are here to help us, or maybe they're here just to look at us, examine us like a bunch of animals, and let us go, or maybe they're here to harm us. And it sounds like in this case, this guy was harmed. I don't know why they would want to do something like that, but apparently they ruined his life. Anyway, continuing here with this article, it says Francisco himself has had several strange encounters en route to the farm in the years following. It isn't clear exactly when the first such incident occurred, but it would appear to be shortly after his father's. This would place it around the late 1970s to early 1980s. As he was riding on his motorcycle along the same road his father used to get to the family farm, he would suddenly notice an object emitting a very bright light. He brought his motorcycle to a stop and remained still, watching the glowing craft as it made its way across the night sky. He would witness several more similar sightings, usually along the same stretch of road over the years that followed. Once again, and while it's pure speculation, such repeat sightings, particularly given that Francisco's father had his own ultimately lethal experience with a UFO, perhaps begs the question as to whether these are just sightings at all. Might they be repeat abduction encounters? Many similar sightings occur with the witness remembering only the initial sighting. Plenty of abductees are not even aware of such close and contact encounters until years later. And some researchers will tell you by law of averages based on their findings that there will be a great many people around the world experiencing regular alien abductions but with no memory whatsoever of them. Now, this is something I was just talking about the other day. And by the way, I just want to point out the author of this piece is Marcus Loth, and it was a pretty good article, I thought. I was pointing out the other day in one of my previous podcasts, I think that that's something that happens with regularity. I think there's a lot of people out there who have been abducted or got abducted numerous times throughout their life and have no idea that it ever happened. I mean, for all I know, somebody was just one of the followers who commented recently saying about my case when I was a kid that there was a being in the room. If I've been getting abducted, I have no idea. If I've been getting abducted by these beings over these years, I don't know. I don't remember really having any missing time or anything like that. One time, there was a time I was driving in the car, but I could have been mistaken. I wasn't sure. But other than that, I don't have any recollection of seeing other alien beings other than that one time when I was a kid. Has it been happening throughout my whole life? It could have been. I don't know. I just don't know. I think that these beings have the ability really to shut us down. And in a way, when you really think about it, it's probably good of them that they do. I mean, I don't think we want to remember something like this. I don't know if I mean, some people say to me, maybe you should go get hypnotized. And I think about it sometimes, but in the end, I always realize, well, why do I want to remember something that's probably going to horrify me, right? I don't know if I'd want to go relive something like that. I'm not sure if I'd want to relive the part when I was, that I remember. I don't know if I'd want to, feel like I was there again and the whole thing was happening all over again. That was terrifying. But another thing about this story, too, is that, I was reading a different, there was some more information about this from a book that was from the book UFO Danger Zone by Bob Pratt, and a couple other articles. But one of the things, he actually heard a buzzing sound, like a hump, like it sounded like bees, like angry bees. And again, I've been talking about this a lot lately. That was the sound I heard, that sound. It's like to me, it sounded like I described it as electronic humming. That was, but it could be described as bees. It could. That's what it sounded like. It was constant, whatever it is. And he heard this coming from that craft in this case here. And a lot of people hear this. In fact, some of the kids at Ariel School, in the Ariel School incident from 1994, they heard this buzzing sound that scared them. So there's, and in one recent case that I was talking about, a different case, an abductee said when one of the while this person was getting abducted, when one of the beings went to speak, that's what it sounded like. So I guess I think it's probably from the ship itself. Though, maybe that's my. I'm just, again, pure speculation. I'm just speculating. I think that over the years I've come to believe that it was probably the ship it was probably hovering, because when I was growing up, me and my brother Davey slept in the attic, so I have a feeling that there could have been a ship just hovering right above the house, and that was what was making that sound that I heard, because so many different cases where people hear these ships and it sounds like bees or an electrical transformer or something. That's what it sounds like. I've heard that sound, and so did this guy right before he got blasted in the face and his life was ruined. Anyway, let's continue here. It says, for his part, Francisco claims no ill will to whatever the intelligence might be behind these mysterious but consistent crafts. It is his belief that events involving his father were an accident. He would state years later, it could happen to me, to you, or to anyone. Yes, it could. And I just want to point out that even Travis Walton pointed out he thought the same thing. He was thinking that it was an accident when he got hit with that beam. Like, basically, people are giving these aliens a pass because Travis Walton did, and now this guy who saying that the aliens must have did it by accident. I don't know how we know that. I don't know how we know that at all. How do we even know that Travis Walton, his incident was an accident? I don't know about that. I don't think Travis knows about that. I don't think any of us could really know what they're up to and what they're doing. Maybe some people in the governments of the world have started to figure this out or have figured it out, but I just don't know. Maybe they are intentionally harming us sometimes as an experiment. Maybe that's what they're doing. Who knows? Anyway, as we mentioned, Brazil is perhaps a hotspot for UFO sightings in South America, which as a continent more than holds its own in terms of strange aerial encounters and bizarre otherworldly creatures. It is no surprise then that many would take interest in the Barosa case. One particular UFO researcher who did so from the very beginning in 1976 was Reginaldo de Oudheid. He would, from the time of the incident until Luis Barosa's death in 1993, visit Quesada once a month. He would regularly speak with the family, as well as log, detail, investigate any further sightings in and around the area, of which there were many. Despite his regular contact with the family, following Luis's death, the children would not grant permission for the authorities to perform an autopsy. This, in Oudheid's opinion, more than anything else, will keep the case a mystery likely forever. Yeah, those kids, the siblings, or the children, right? They should have got together and said, "Yeah, we need to do an autopsy and figure out what was ailing our father for all these years." I mean, they owed him that. I think. I mean, what were they thinking? You should have had an autopsy to find out what caused all of this. Anyway, it says here, it is certainly an interesting case and not the first to feature a UFO with a strange laser beam. However, what is perhaps different is in the vast majority of these laser beam cases, which have happened across the decades and around the world, the beam in question would induce paralysis but not death. One of these would occur in Brazil around 6 months later in Santa Catarina. So should we deduce that whoever was behind the object witnessed by Luis, they were either different from the intelligence in those cases, or they had altogether different intentions for him? We'll never know the answers to any of these questions, actually. I'll leave the link here so you can check out the rest of the article for yourself. But there is a lot of stuff here. There's a lot more to it. And there's actually a book called UFO Danger Zone by Bob Pratt, which was an interesting book, and it talked about different cases from Brazil, including this one. Yeah, I think... if you see one of these craft, it might be a good idea to get out of there as fast as you can. Now, I'm not sure if this gentleman here had a chance to do that, but Unfortunately, too bad he didn't, because if he would have, maybe he could have avoided a life of pain and suffering. And basically, he devolved, his mind devolved to that of a 1 year old child, while his skin was replaced by baby skin. There's no explanation for it. Doctors looked at him, they have no explanation to why this happened, but it did happen. Uh, and there are pictures you will find online. I'm not going to put any of the pictures on here today because I don't know. There could be copyright concerns. But if you go check out some of the images online, you'll see a picture of this guy. He did not look to be in good shape whatsoever, and his life was ruined because he got hit with a beam from a UFO. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about the recent Spotify poll, the most recent one. It was for the episode CIA Delivered Egg-Shaped ET Craft to Area 51 in the 1980s, whistleblower tells Arrow. I asked this question: do you think the story about the egg-shaped alien craft at Area 51 is a true description of a factual event? So far, there's 40 votes. 12 people, or 30%, say no, while 28 people, or 70%, say yes. I agree with the majority. I don't think this guy was making that story up. There's what would be the point? I just don't get it. That there would be no point in doing something like that. Why would you be going to going to Arrow and telling Arrow about this? I mean, the guy felt it was important enough to take this to Arrow, and this guy's somebody who is works for a defense contractor and an aerospace contractor. This is Eric Tabor. He's one of the whistleblowers. I guess one of the people we're talking about here. One of the people that has been willing to go to Congress and tell them what he knows as well. So I don't think there would be any reason to make this story up. Why would he make it up? And so I think it's a true story. Again, it's not. Is it end all evidence? No, of course not. But we're gonna get there. Now, of course, everyone in the UFO community right now, it seems like everyone's saying, well, 2024 is going to be a great year. Well, 2023 has been a pretty big year. I mean, it really has been. There's been a lot of stuff going on this year. And I do think that 2024 will be a big year too. I have to agree with them. I don't think this is going to stop. I think it's like a snowball that's rolling down a hill that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Even despite the fact that that legislation was canned, that doesn't matter. We're still moving forward. We're trying to get to an end game here where this cover-up ends and disclosure happens. And people in the UFO community, we just want more information about these beings. What does the government know about them? That's all we really want. And we want the rest of the world to realize this too. And we don't like the idea of people getting made fun of when they report seeing a UFO or alien beings. That should not happen. Because they really did in a lot of these cases, right? So people aren't crackpots and on drugs just because they see a UFO or an extraterrestrial being. These things really happen. The people who are there's a lot of people out there who don't want this to be true, and that's why they look to people like debunkers. They go to the debunkers to be told that it's not true because they're afraid of this reality. It's understandable in a way, but at the same time, I mean, I'm afraid of sharks too, but I'm not going to deny that they exist, right? I mean, I'm afraid of getting eaten alive if I take a swim in the ocean, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to pretend that they don't exist, right? I mean, that's what seems like what's happening here. To a lot of people out there, this whole subject just seems so really far-fetched to them because they've been brought up to think that way. It's unfortunate. But we're going to get there. I think that 2024 is going to be a big year. Think about all the stories from 2023, in addition to what's been going on in Congress and the whistleblowers. I mean, in addition to Grush and all of that stuff, we had the hearings. We had the NASA talking about it. I mean, there's been a lot of movement, and then there's been a lot of big stories too. I think about the Vegas alien story. I still believe that story, I think it really happened. I know there's some people who say it's a hoax, but they still haven't proved that that's a hoax. I mean, those people have stuck to their guns. They actually were interviewed months after it now, and they're saying the same thing. There were a lot of big stories in 2023, and I think things are going to keep moving in a positive direction in 2024. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.